Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome and thank you for joining us today. My name is Todd. My name is Todd Pittman, and I'm a communications officer with UN Human Rights. It's my honor to introduce to you today two expert members of the UN's Independent International Fact-Finding Mission on Myanmar, who will be briefing you here today. The first is Mr. Marzuki Darusman, who I'm sure many of you here already know. He's a former Attorney General of Indonesia and a leading human rights campaigner. He's also chair of this fact-finding commission. The second is Professor Chris Sidoti, an international human rights lawyer and a former Australian human rights commissioner. As you know, the fact-finding mission presented its report to the Human Rights Council on the situation in Myanmar almost 1 year ago. And since then, the experts and their staff have continued their work, and tirelessly so. The experts are here to brief you on the progress of that work, and I now leave it to them to do that. They'll start with a brief statement, 5 or 10 minutes each, and then we'll take questions from the media. Please note this press conference is also being streamed live on Zoom, the details of which went out in a news advisory last night. We'll not be able to take questions from outside due to time and logistic constraints. However, anyone watching the feed live on Zoom can send me an email and I'll forward that to the experts. My email cell number are on the bottom of the press release. So without further ado, I give you Mission Chair Marzuki Darusman.
Thank you, Don. And again, colleagues from the media, international media, and national media. I just quickly also Professor Sidoti to my left, the fact-finding mission is writing up what one is know, and so we divide up the work here amongst that. On the end is Mr. Pradeep Varu, who is the coordinating secretary of the Secretariat of the fact-finding mission, the coordinator of it. Let me just thank you again for being here today. For the next time since we started work 2 years ago and expressed my appreciation in behalf of the fact-finding mission for the great collaboration that has been there from the very start. Today, it is our intention to announce the launch of a report, in part of the overall report that will be presented by the fact-finding mission in September. You will know that we presented our initial report in September of last year and came to certain conclusions based on reasonable grounds, believing that what our mandate had asked us to look into was corroborated in the sense that alleged gross human rights violations did take place in Myanmar. The whole range of the most serious international crimes. Based on those conclusions, we were tasked in our extension of the mandate as of last September until this coming September to consolidate our findings and to report to the Commission of our activities in the last 1 year period to be handed over to the new mechanism, the so-called independent investigative mechanism on Myanmar, which follows on the fact-finding mission mandated to prepare a prosecutorial file against those that the fact-finding mission had identified and announced in our report being the most responsible for the atrocities that took place from August 25, 2017 on until today. Now this report that we are launching today, we are announcing to launch, which goes down to Geneva, focuses specifically on the Myanmar armed forces, known as the Tatmadaw. We have dedicated the better part of 1 year in looking into this, studying, research, going over the issues, and come up with a report that meets the demanding norms of scholarship and academic rigor. President Sidoki will then elaborate on this, and we will then follow on with a Q&A, hopefully not too long, because we would also like to allow you to go into the networks and rush back and report. And wait until then the launch will then officially be undertaken. I will end by thanking the UN Jakarta for hosting this gathering, this media meeting, and express our appreciation for the generous hosting and placement that we provided today, and thank the present coordinator and the team, Anita Ironi, for facilitating this meeting. Thank you. I'll ask let's go to that. Thank you.
Thank you, Pak Marzuki. Selamat siang, or Myanmar language, Mingalava. Thank you very much for joining us today to enable us to update you on the work of the fact-finding mission. As Pak Marzuki has indicated, the first of this year's reports has just been released in Geneva. It is the first of 5 reports that we will be releasing between today, 5th of August, and the 16th of September. When we issued our major report in September last year, we identified the most basic issue in Myanmar. That most basic issue is the dominance of the military in Myanmar's economic and political life. We could see no prospect of improvement in Myanmar's human rights record without fundamental transformation of the role of the military in Myanmar politics and the economy. Therefore, we called last year for economic disengagement, total economic disengagement from the Myanmar military. The report that's released today gives content to that recommendation. It turns a general recommendation into very practical proposals for economic disengagement. It is, however, the beginning of the work of identifying the arms and legs of military economic dominance rather than the last word on the subject. We report today on what we have found over 6 months, and we urge investigators, that is, other UN agencies and mechanisms, governments, journalists, academics, NGOs, to continue the work that we have begun and report today, so that we do indeed have a complete understanding of where the military is active. Our report identifies the 2 principal holding companies of the military's economic work, the Myanmar Economic Holdings Limited and the Myanmar Economic Corporation, Myanmar Economic Corporation. The report lists 120 subsidiaries of those 2 holding companies that we have identified. It also lists the 27 affiliated businesses that we have identified. All 150 companies in total, part of the military's economic empire in Myanmar. We've looked as well, as a start, at some of the foreign corporations that are engaged in economic activity with the military. We list 15 foreign companies engaged in joint ventures and another 44 foreign companies with commercial ties to the military. We don't believe for a minute that these 59 companies are the only foreign companies economically engaged with the military. They represent the state of our research today. Again, we call for further research to map foreign engagement with the military in Myanmar after today. We've also looked at arms dealing with the military, providing the hardware that enables the military to maintain the kinds of human rights violating operations that we reported on last year. We identified 14 foreign companies, of which 12 are state-owned companies from 7 states that have been involved in arms deals with the military since 2016. We have also identified 7 foreign private companies involved in dual-use information and communications technology transfers to Myanmar that will enhance the information gathering capacity of the military. These numbers are really the tip of the iceberg. They are certainly not the last word or the total picture, but they are in themselves indicators of the extent of military economic involvement in Myanmar. Perhaps one of the most disturbing findings in our report is the way in which the military actively solicited donations from corporations to support its human rights violating efforts in Rakhine State against the Rohingya people. We report how in September 2017, the Commander-in-Chief, Senior General Min Aung Hlaing, held 3 separate fundraising events where he described the clearance operations conducted by the military, the raising of Rohingya villages, the construction of solid barriers to prevent their return, and invited corporations to contribute financially to this work of the military. And we were staggered to find that there were 45 corporate donors that actually provided funds to the military to enable the military to do what it's done in Rakhine State. We can't even guess at the total economic holdings of the military in Myanmar. We can't even begin the task of identifying their value. One report we received, which seems to be reliable, but we have not been able to verify, this report indicates that a few years ago, in 1 year, around $200 million was paid by one of these holding companies to just one of the military's commands. We have not included that information in our report because we couldn't verify it. Further information is needed. One of the characteristics of the Myanmar military is its total lack of transparency. We need further information before we can understand the value of the Myanmar's military's economic holdings. Our report makes recommendations generally to the Security Council of the United Nations, to UN agencies, international financial institutions, individual states, important recommendations to business, and even to consumers relating to the approach to be taken to Myanmar products. The recommendations reflect a 2-pronged strategy. There is a negative dimension. Get out of bed with the military. Cut their access to independent resources. stop the process of enriching the generals individually and the military institutionally. But our recommendations also contain a necessary positive dimension. Myanmar was once one of the richest countries in Asia. 60 years of military rule has bankrupted the country and impoverished its peoples. The international community cannot stand by while this impoverishment continues. There is need for economic development, there is need for investment, there is need for joint ventures and support, development cooperation and assistance, but not where this involves the military. We recommend a positive approach to build up the non-military component of the Myanmar economy. Not no investment, but more investment, more activity, more support for the people, but in ways that exclude the further enrichment of the military and the funding of their human rights violating activities. So the report that we released today in Geneva presents these two prongs of recommendations: cutting off the military's access to money, committing to the development of a non-military economy in Myanmar. We expect that international organisations, states and business will respond. Thank you.
So now we can take some questions. Just keep in mind we have to stop at 1 p.m. because Mr. Marzuki has another appointment. So anybody have any questions? Okay. Just please identify yourself and just use Albert keyboard.
My name is Amanda Rocha. I'm the Southeast Asian correspondent for the Australian newspaper. I'm interested in hearing from our members on whether this report in some ways reflects the frustration of the three-member panel, given that it has made these recommendations before and it has seen very little progress on this. You've now outed 59 foreign companies, a number of states as well as Myanmar companies responsible for helping enrich and enabling the military. Does this reflect a frustration on the part of the panel to get any movement on the sanctions so fast?
Well, thank you, Amanda. I think this is the anticipated question. This is a report that we like to believe is the first of its kind in terms of detail, establishing quite the degree to which the military has used businesses to operate and the process in the course of operating militarily with total impunity, committing those human rights violations, not only in Jakarta but also across the country, involved in a continuing conflict that has raged for more than 50 years with all the other ethnic groups, and bypassing civilian oversight, evading accountability. Now, what Professor Jody has outlined is a report that is quite fascinating, actually. We were fascinated with all these details that we came across. And this is a work in progress, and it is intended to create the impetus for further research, because some of the points that really cooperation may take a bit of time, and with time with UN scheduling to have this report as soon as possible submitted. But having said that, the fascination of the whole picture of the extent, the reach, the depth of such kind of may distract us from the fundamental issue that we are trying to get across. And that is that the business resources have substantively enhanced the Tatmadao's capability to commit atrocities. And so this goes beyond any immediate issue of having to deal with challenges of accountability, sanctions, and issues related to that. This is to make the point that what has enabled the Tatmadaw to commit these crimes is, in fact, their business relations and their business activities. And therefore, the immediate challenge ahead is to address this. And that's why we are calling for an immediate embargo. In a way, serving notice to businesses, international and national, that dealing with the Tatmadaw from today on will have international legal consequences. And therefore, it is now up to the international community to move on this. We have presented a number of recommendations to the Myanmar government in the spirit of helping the government to lay out a roadmap ahead to work towards placing the Tatmadaw under civilian control. We are not contesting the nature of the whole business of doing business. What has taken place in the past has taken place. What we now want to underline is that we have now come up with a clear conclusion that there is this indisputable link between business and committing of atrocities. And if this implicates the Tatmadaw and also the civilian government, then it, in a way, it will lead to implicating also the business entities that are doing business with the Tatmadaw. So, I hope this answers your question. It's not a frustration report, but it is a report that is accompanied with a healthy dose of anger on our part.
May I just one brief comment? Just one brief addition. The international response to any crisis is always achingly slow. We've been pleased by the responses that have occurred to date following our report last year, but they too have been achingly slow. For example, of the 6 senior generals that we recommended be sanctioned, many states have imposed sanctions on 4, including Australia, but the top 2, the 2 who are most responsible, the Commander-in-Chief and his deputy, were only sanctioned for the first time last month, only by one state, the United States, and only in a largely symbolic way. Australia has not sanctioned these 2, and that's part of the achingly slow response of the international community. We certainly hope that our recommendations will be implemented quickly. We expect that they will be implemented.
Okay, next.
I'm Reza from National Radio. My first question for Mr. Responder. As you mentioned, that there are 14 foreign companies from 7 states. Could you elaborate? And then the second, maybe to Mr. Christopher and also when is the right time for the repatriation?
Repatriation.
Perhaps if I deal with the trade, maybe you deal with the repatriation. The report lists in its appendix the countries and the companies that are concerned. For the purpose of local media, Indonesia was not amongst them. But we are concerned, and this is since 2016, so this is in relatively recent years, since the flare-up of violence in Rakhine State against the Rohingya in 2016. So some of these states are states that have rejected any concept of sanctions of the military, which is unfortunate. But others are states that are genuinely committed to arms embargoes of one kind or another. So the surprise for us was the number of states that were involved and the number of state-owned companies which have a higher level of responsibility. But you'll see them actually listed and the nature of the trade within the appendix of the report, rather than me go through it in detail now. Okay.
Thank you. To use Chris's term, repatriation has been agingly slow. We've made a return visit to Cox's Bazar after 2 years, and everyone that we met expressed their wish to return to Myanmar. But they needed assurance that they would be given citizenship and that they were safe and they were welcome there with dignity. And so these are very straightforward requirements and understandable. And therefore, anytime these conditions are met, we will see a stream of Rohingyas wanting to come back as soon as possible. So the ball is in the court of the Myanmar government. And perhaps what could be done to manifest good faith on the part of the Myanmar government is to address the plight, the fate, the situation of the remaining Rohingya community in Myanmar. There are a number around 500,000 plus. And the moment the remaining Rohingya community feel that things have changed, then the path is open for the Rohingyas in Cox's outside of Myanmar to gradually return and reunite with their brethren and their community in Myanmar. So it's a very simple issue, made complicated because of the reluctance of the Myanmar government, understandably because they've incited the public in such a way that they've pushed themselves into a corner, and therefore the overriding issue now is for the government of Myanmar to deal with their own people. So that will be the view of the fact-finding commission, and that is that anytime these requirements are met, then of course repatriation will just happen, not as a repatriation, but as a homecoming.
Okay, anybody else?
Annie from the Associated Press. Will the UN push for a stronger stance on Myanmar government crime of humanity? And how is the UN help in repatriation? And the new study from the Australian say that it's not safe for the Rohingya to return home. So, and the media report also said that the Rohingya refugees don't want to come home until they are recognized as the citizen. Can you comment on that?
One of the enduring memories I have of the work that we have done is an interview with an elderly Rohingya man in Cox's Bazar. I say elderly, he was probably younger than me, but he looked a lot older. And he told me how he and his family had fled from Rakhine State on 3 occasions. In the 1990s, in 2012, and again in 2017. And he said in the 1990s and 2012, he went back and only to leave again. And he wants to go home to his land. He wants to take his family back, but he's not prepared to go home until he can do so without fear of having to leave for a 4th time. The people in Cox's Bazar are fully entitled to insist that this whole process of repeated forcible deportation come to an end. And they're entitled to insist that until it comes to an end, they not be asked to go back. They want to go back, there's no doubt about it, but not to the same situation that they fled. And the problem is that there are 400,000, maybe 500,000 Rohingya still in Rakhine State, whose conditions are essentially unchanged from those that have existed since 2012. They are either in virtual concentration camps, or locked up in urban ghettos, or in surrounded villages, cut off from farms and fishing, from schools, from healthcare. Why would 1 million people go back to that? The top priority, if we are interested in repatriation, is changing the situation of the Rohingya who remain in Rakhine State. And until that situation changes fundamentally and their rights are restored, they are protected, they are safe, and they enjoy full participation in the life of the Myanmar nation, until that happens, the exiles in Cox's Bazar cannot and will not go back.
Could I just add to that question and maybe just return to the launch of the reform and link it to the Rohingyas. You will know that, and it's in the report, you will know that the Myanmar government set up a fence between Bangladesh and Myanmar. That fence was erected after the exodus took place. And it was intended to prevent the Rohingyas from coming back, reinforcing the conclusion that we had that the exodus and the atrocities were meant, in fact, to drive the Rohingyas outside the country, to rid the country of its Rohingyas. Now, this fence was built on the basis of business resources. The business finances this, apart from the national budget, partly. The land there where the villages used to be, where the Rohingya communities lived in the past, have been totally bulldozed. This is done by a unit in the government called the Union Enterprise, which solicits and generates resources also from the business community. So this is to give you a sense that it's all intertwined. It's a clear linkage there between state policies, Tatmadaw policies, and business resources. So if you talk about repatriation, please bring this up and link it to the fact that this is made possible because of resources made available by the business community in Myanmar.
Can I just say briefly, when people talk about defence, please don't imagine a couple of posts with some strands of wire run between them. We've seen, Mazuki and I, many kilometres of defence. It is around 2 metres of solid metal, topped with about another metre of barbed wire strung between thick metal posts. That's what defence is. And its purpose is to stop people going home.
Hi, I'm Dian from Jakarta. I'm wondering what's your assessment for the repatriation efforts facilitated by ASEAN, because ASEAN that is one of the agencies granted access in Rakhine State, and I've met with volunteers there and working on prevent repatriation, but their preliminary assessment a few months ago has been largely
Yeah. Yes, we addressed this question with a heavy heart, actually. This is an ASEAN issue. But reports have been somewhat fragmented. But we've been made to understand that this was a preliminary assessment undertaken by the ASEAN humanitarian agency, and that there is an intention to undertake a follow-up assessment on this, which may be much more closely calibrated to the intention of repatriation. There are signs of willingness on a very broad basis among ASEAN countries to collectively move on this, although it's understandably slow because, of course, you will require the buy-in and the collaboration of the Myanmar government, and that seems to be the picture presented to us, to the public at the moment. Now, of course, this will have to be manifested in concrete steps, but the pressure is on, and that is that it is now embarked on this, and it cannot return. And so much will hinge on the regional association's initiatives And they could take the lead on this and allow the repatriation process to take place. But what substantively will persuade the Rohingya community to come back is the addressing of the remaining community there in Myanmar. And therefore, the hope, of course, is that this will take place as soon as possible, with, of course, the situation continuing to continue to be as it is since 2 years ago. Nothing much has changed, as Patrick has said. But clearly, there is much expectation on ASEAN to move on this.
Hi, my name is Chandni. I'm from Channel News Asia. I just want to ask that now this report is out, the recommendations have been made, and some of them have been made before as well. And this report is going to be presented to the UN Human Rights Council in September. But what's next? What comes after this? Thank you.
The report certainly covers some of the ground that our recommendations previously have covered. But the substantial difference is that there is now a great deal of detail. It was legitimate a year ago when we said disengage economically from the military, for people to say to us, well, what does that mean? Who do we stop dealing with? It's no longer possible to ask that question. It's no longer possible to say we don't know where the military is. We may not yet have a total picture, but as I indicated, we have identified almost 150 companies that are owned by the military, either through their two conglomerates or through associated companies. So we are providing in this report the detail that is necessary for action on implementation of our recommendations for disengagement. What's next? Yes, we'll be talking about this for the remaining 6 weeks of our mandate. We will be appearing before the Human Rights Council. We are drawing our recommendations to the attention of all those to whom they are directed. But mid-September, our mandate is finished. We no longer exist as a fact-finding mission. And here, the legacy of our reports becomes important. It's over to you guys, it's over to the media, to non-government organisations, to states that understand the seriousness of what's happening in media in Myanmar, to take up the reports that we have presented by them, run with them, act on them, continue the investigation, report, increase transparency, and ultimately in that way contribute to transformations within Myanmar.
I'm looking from City Morning Herald. My question is, are these 7 countries that are being discussed against Myanmar and Turkey, are they also condemning atrocities taking place there? And if they do, what does it mean? I mean, they're condemning, but they're having this discussion.
City Morning Herald.
Many of the 7 countries, 7 states whose companies have been involved in arms trade have been vocal in condemning Myanmar, yes. Not all of them, but many of them have been. And we would certainly expect that they would look far more closely at the actions of companies within their jurisdiction to combine the rhetoric of criticism with action to stop assistance to the military. So in releasing this information, that's certainly our hope and our expectation.
Amanda Hodges from the Australian newspaper again. I wanted to ask you about the Myanmar government's response, if you've had any so far, particularly in relation to one of the key recommendations in your report, which is that they amend the constitution, which is a military drafted document that actually enshrines military power, that they amend that constitution so that if there is a total transformation of the military, it comes under civilian power, which seems to me almost an impossibility right now. I mean, this government has tried that already and failed, and its aims in doing that were multifaceted. This was one of them. They haven't been able to do that for the simple fact that they operate under a military drafted constitution. So how are they supposed to overturn that constitution when the military has such a stranglehold enshrined by that constitution on government? Also, second question is, you talked about your fascination with some of the countries and companies involved. Can you explain or go into further detail about what particularly surprised you? Was it, for instance, Singapore's involvement or Japan's sort of wide corporate involvement?
Perhaps I speak the first part, Chris, and Amanda. I think we're going into analytical issues here, and I'm wanting to just give a sense that the report that's being launched here focused on that has been undertaken also against the background, against the imperial background of what took place in Indonesia, that it is possible to displace an entrenched armed forces that have been there for the last 40, 50 years. And therefore, going into possible scenarios would be fascinating, of course, but the point being made here is that anything that is put in place in terms of measures, to curtail the operations of that now in business, it depends on the overall consolidation of democracy and development in the country, which may be even more determining than any kind of civil-military relations formula that's academically being put forth here. And therefore, in our travels, during this past meeting with the youth of ASEAN, who are also in touch with the youth of Myanmar, we keep on hearing that they desire for a clean Jakarta, untainted by business relations. They desire a unified Myanmar, despite of the conflict that continues to rage there. They desire a professional army that focuses on defense. And they desire an army that's a guardian of the nation rather than being guards to the generals. Now, this is a myth that we're trying to debunk, that without the Tatmadaw, the country is going to fall apart. That is not going to happen. The youth will ensure that. And that is our goal for Myanmar in the future.
second question was what surprised us about the companies that we identified. I've already referred to the donations campaign. That surprised me. It surprised me that any corporate leaders would be willing to contribute money and thereby make themselves potentially criminally complicit in the actions of the military. In noting that, I do also know that they are largely, or they are exclusively domestic companies in that category. So far as the foreign companies are concerned, the thing I found most surprising is an attitude that simply obeying Myanmar law is enough. That provided we don't infringe Myanmar law, everything that we do is acceptable, and why would anybody question it? And that's just not good enough. Obeying the law is the minimum requirement in corporate responsibility. It's not an aspiration if we hope to obey the law. It's the absolute bare minimum, the low watermark. It's not the high watermark of satisfying all responsibility. We have international guiding principles for business and human rights that talk about due diligence in business activity. No business, foreign business, would think of investing anywhere in a project unless it had done economic due diligence and satisfied itself that the project was economically justifiable. Well, so too, it has an obligation for human rights due diligence. It should not be involved in projects that raise serious human rights questions. And yet so many foreign companies have been prepared knowingly to deal with companies that are financial enterprises of the Myanmar military. They know what's going on, they know what these companies are, they know where they come from, and they know where the money goes in general terms. They may not know whose pocket it goes into, but they know it goes into the pocket of the military. And I'm surprised at the attitude that says simply obeying the law of Myanmar is all that anyone can expect of us. It's not.
Anybody else?
My name is Detan Mohatara. My question is, you mentioned that there is 15 foreign firms and 44 others that form commercial ties with Tatmadaw. Would the mission disclose which countries these foreign firms are originated from? That's my first question. And second, you said that ASEAN has been slow in contributing to easing the human rights violation in Rakhine State, and do you have any advice for ASEAN as a improvement? Thank you.
I'll take the first one and I'll be brief. I won't, again, bore you to death by going through each one in turn. It's all listed there in the report, the name of every company and the nature of the commercial involvement. So you'll find the detail there. I would emphasise again, though, that this is just the beginning. You know, to talk about my country, there's no Australian firms there. That doesn't mean there are no Australian firms dealing with the military. It's just indicates that our research hasn't got that yet. Further research is needed. We're talking about the beginning, not the end.
Yes, well, ASEAN, it's, can I just add the statement that it hasn't been slow. It has been agonizingly slow. If ASEAN is going to move forward on this, and I think it will have to move forward with it. The sense is that perhaps ASEAN have not allowed the consequences of the conclusions of the fact-finding mission to sink in and to understand the the ultimate consequences of allowing the issue to drag on. The conclusion of the fact-finding mission is that let's break the silence. This is the time to break the silence on what happened. We believe that genocide took place here. Full stop. But that has to be proved in a court of law. Now, if this stigma continues to hang over ASEAN, then I think there will be serious doubts about the whole idea of ASEAN. This is not just the government of ASEAN that's at stake. It is the whole notion of ASEAN, the whole idea of ASEAN that is now on the line. And the responsibility of the 10 ASEAN governments is to see to it that the original intent of setting up ASEAN on the basis of respect for human rights is fully addressed. No advice is going to make any difference. If they claim that ASEAN is a people-oriented association, then manifest that, express that. So it's over to them to just take the lead on this. Otherwise, this region will forever be seen as an area where these atrocities have allowed to happen, and this will have an impact, a domino impact, if you will, that this can be the fate of any ethnic group in Southeast Asia, and that the perpetrators can just get away with it.
Okay, on that, I think we're going to have to leave it there, given the time. Thank you all for coming. If you would like to do any follow-up interviews, please contact me and we'll try to set that up for you. Thank you.